What's up, everybody? It's season 2, episode 4 of the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. I am joined so you can start your day with BK. How about that, Mr. Bob Knakal? Start your day with BK. But I'm joined with the one, the only Mr. Bob Knakal today. And I'm super excited because you're a repeat guest. We've only had 2 repeat guests, and we have had an enormous amount of folks reaching out to us about questions to ask you and revisiting our prior conversation. But first and foremost, Mr. Bob Knakal, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Logan. Thank you so much for having me on. Always great to chat with you and the good folks in Kansas City. So sorry that the Chiefs didn't make it to the playoffs this year, but you've had a great run. And I'm ready to talk about some real estate. Have your coffee. Let's talk about real estate. And nothing better to talk about than real estate, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, if you guys are coming in live, we are monitoring the chat on LinkedIn. So Alan Buchanan is already saying good morning. So Alan is a guest and a good friend of mine as well. Thank you for being here, Alan. We very much appreciate that. Put you up on the screen here for a second. Good morning to you, sir. Before we jump in, just as a reminder, this slide matters because the Market Pulse, this podcast, is more than just a podcast. It's a strategic tool for our team, right? We are doing 3 things with every single episode. And number 1, it helps to sharpen our own market understanding. Number 2, it positions ourselves as the local experts in the marketplace. And number 3, it creates consistent high trust touch points with our owners, investors. So we're very much appreciative of all of the guests that have come on previously and the ones that are coming on here very soon. If you're interested in Kansas City commercial real estate, please do reach out to one of our team members or myself, and we'll get you taken care of. Okay, I don't know how much of an introduction Mr. Bob Knakal needs, but I will say this. Bob is one of the most influential figures in commercial real estate. I'm not sure I have the up-to-date figures because you guys are always closing transactions. But right now I've got around 2,300 property sales. Am I on? Am I close?
2391, and that last deal, which was $141 million development site in Midtown, put us over $24 billion for the
$24 billion. Yeah.
So, yeah. So
that is awesome.
Back up over time.
Yeah. 100% they do. Absolutely. Well, I want to, since we're short on time today, I'm going to go ahead and just get into it because we spoke about, and I think it was close to 12 months ago that we connected, but you had, when you were starting BKREA, you had a real big focus on artificial intelligence and AI. And I think last year, 2025, was a year that a lot of people started to really try and figure out artificial intelligence. I'm not sure how many people actually implemented artificial intelligence, but I'd love to ask you, Bob, what are you actually using today versus just experimenting with? What have you seen be actually influential in your business with AI in 2025?
Yeah, well, Logan, let me tell you, I think AI is the coolest thing ever. And look, technology is not my bag, baby, as Austin Powers would say. You know, I'm the kind of guy, I'm happy my cell phone goes on in the morning. But, I realized right away, looking at my career, I started in 1984, no phone, no cell phone, no computer, no fax machine. And the world has changed so much. But I realized 2 years ago when we started BKREA that AI was going to change the world to an even greater extent in the next 5 years than it did in the last 40. And so the first person I hired was my COO, Seth Samowitz, who is an AI guru. He started AI companies. He worked in driverless cars. The guy knows the stuff inside and out. So we are creating a lot of proprietary systems from scratch using AI. And when we talked a year ago, we were using it for, the 1, 2, and 3 things you have on the screen there: prospecting, deal execution, data interpretation. The prospecting and deal execution were the easiest to implement because those basically are nothing more than funneling processes. We're going from thousands of people to hundreds of people to dozens of people to a few people. And so AI is great, and there's a lot of applications you can use for creating those funneling processes. And when I was on a year ago, I said data interpretation really is a thing that has the potential to be the most powerful, but is going to be the toughest to use. And I want to explain that because I think it's important to understand that, you can have the best AI models, the best algorithms in the world, but if you're putting crappy data into them, even the best models are not going to produce anything worthwhile. And the reality is most data sets in real estate are terrible. Absolute numbers, absolute numbers don't mean anything. It's the relationship between numbers that matter. And that's the relationship between numbers over time. Are they going up? Are they going down? How much are they going up? How much are they going down? And in order for those relationships to have integrity, the data has to be calculated using the same exact methodology over the whole course of the data set. So we're very fortunate that I've always been a statistical oriented person. We have data sets that are 42 years old that have been using the same exact methodology over those whole 4 decades. And so we're applying AI models to it. We're just coming out with our Knakal Land Index, which is a study of over 2,500 development site sales in Manhattan going back to 1984. We're producing all kinds of unbelievable stuff. We have over 200 nuggets that are coming out of this data, such as if you have a corner development site as opposed to a mid-block development site, you're going to get a 24.4% premium in your pricing. I mean, wild stuff like that is taking this very, very high integrity data set and creating insights that are going to allow our clients to make more informed decisions. And with more informed decisions, you get better outcomes. So I think we're situated to be able to give our clients a big advantage over non-clients. The thing that has changed since a year ago when we had this conversation is that now we're using AI models to basically gain insight into who our buying clients are. And again, our whole value proposition has been the same for 42 years. We only sell properties. We only represent sellers. We only work on an exclusive basis, only work in New York. And so we now are limiting what we're doing even more so in that we're focusing on what you do with vacant buildings in New York. What do you do with a vacant building in New York? Number one, you knock it down and build something new. Number two, you renovate the heck out of it and change the use from one use to another. Or 3, you sell it to a user. Those are the only 3 sandboxes we're playing in today. They're all very highly correlated and synergistic, but it is allowing us to really go. I was using this phrase that for 40 years I went a mile wide and an inch deep, and today I'm going an inch wide and a mile deep. And our whole firm is doing that, and it's really creating a big competitive advantage. So what we're doing with AI today is that I've taken marketing reports that we've done. We've always done marketing reports for clients. And we have our list of, for the past, I think going back to 2002, I have all the marketing reports that we've done on every property and looked at who signed a CA, who made a bid, and how their bid ranked according to what the property sold for. So we're now creating profiles on every buyer, and we can say to somebody, hey, over the past 20 years, you've signed 472 CAs. You haven't made a single bid. Are you just bored? You have nothing to do all day long, so you just want to look at setups? Are you really a player in the market? Or, hey, you've signed 173 CAs, you made bids on 62 properties, but your average offer was only 71% of what the selling price is. How can we help you if you really want to buy property? How can we help you become more competitive? And so, the insight that this is providing, and I mean, we have thousands of marketing reports. right? How can you, without AI, possibly come up with these metrics to give scores to the folks who you're going after? And sometimes a client will say, "Hey, I don't want to go out to the whole market. Who should we be going to?" And rather than guessing and saying, "Well, hey, XYZ company's been pretty active lately, let's go to them," we can say, "Hey, let's go to all the clients that have a rating of 90 or better." Based on a number of factors. What have they bought? What are they developing now? What is their average offer relative to sale price? How many offers have they made? What's the percentage of deals they look at and sign CAs on versus the bids that they've how many bids have they made on those properties they've looked at? So the insight that we're getting is truly remarkable, and it's mind blowing. I wish that, when I started in '84, that we knew that this AI was going to be coming around, because I would have saved a lot. I've saved a ton of stuff, a ton. But I wish we had saved even more stuff. And I have my old Bob Knakal files on a hard drive. So we're going to go back and get this data done all the way going back to 1988 on folks. So, it's producing just mind-blowing insight into the market and into individual buyers and companies.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible, and it's inspiring. And I love to hear that you are always looking for unique ways to take data and interpret it in a way that can be valuable to not only your firm, but obviously your clients and prospective clients. One thing that really stuck with me when we had our first conversation was, thinking outside the box. And that's one of your lessons. That's actually lesson learned number one, right? Is to think outside the box. And I had this idea, BK, that if I can put out 10x more targeted Kansas City commercial real estate content this year than any other firm, that's likely to win me a decent amount of business. But how do you do that? Well, with AI, I can do that now. And what's really important for a changing environment like Kansas City attracting a lot of capital is for new developments is what's being approved and what's not. And I said, okay, well, I'm always going and reading, planning and zoning commission meetings and minutes and agendas. But what if I can digest the top 5 counties that I want to focus on: Overland Park, Lenexa, Kansas City, Missouri, Blue Springs, and Lee Summit. I trained an AI bot and an agent to go and pull that information from those meetings into a database. It then scripts a podcast script, and then I've cloned my voice on 11 Labs to read that podcast script. So every month we have 5 episodes going on over those municipalities and what got approved, what didn't get approved. Get this, BK. On the back end, we have the ability to then chat with all of that data to say, I do retail leasing in Johnson County, Kansas. Send me the last 12 months of leads of new projects or rezoned projects. And now you've got a lead list to go work on because you've seen and know what's going on. That's not hitting the headlines. So just an incredible way to utilize artificial intelligence from a lead generation and business development standpoint. And I wanted to share that with you because I thought that was a really cool application that you kind of inspired me to build out.
Yeah, well, that's great, Logan. I think that's fantastic. And to the extent that you can sprinkle in that some proprietary data that you've gotten that adds to it and kicks it up a little bit, that's even better. I think that publicly available information is great, but mix in your own proprietary data, mix in your insight and opinion and how you interpret the data. Data interpretation is really important. You could, I think that a lot of folks, like when you look at the people who study the equities market, they'll say, oh, equities were down 3% today, and that was because it was only 6 degrees outside or whatever. They make it up. In hindsight, is really easy to make up any excuse why something happened. But trying to forecast what is likely to happen in the future is the most valuable information you can share with potential clients, because that gives them insight. And if you have a basis for it, I mean, nobody knows the future, obviously, but to the extent that you can come up with an opinion about what's going to happen in the future based upon what's happened in the past and how you're seeing a combination of factors today, that's golden stuff. So I applaud you for doing that. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Please do keep your questions coming in. I'm seeing all of them. Absolutely. We'll get to those here in 1 second. Also, I just want to make a quick disclosure or disclaimer. I have 3 small children upstairs that are about to come downstairs. You are going to hear them. I apologize in advance, but we had to start the day with BK today and get it done. So just a quick little disclaimer there. Okay. I do want to pull a Knakal nugget out, right? You've always said that brokerage is really an information business and relationship business. But in regards to the information side of things, we just touched on data interpretation and being able to aggregate this information, especially tracking it over a very long period of time so that we can, and this is one of my favorite quotes, remember the future, right? Well, let me ask you this. 12 months ago, you said that New York City was going to have the highest number of transaction volumes in its history. And Q4 data just came out, Mr. BK, and you know this already, but I do want to share this with everybody. Over $180 billion was done in Q4 of 2025, which absolutely blasted out all expectations, which puts the national average around $550 to $600 billion of commercial real estate done. So to me, your interpretation of that data was spot on, but how did that stack up in New York City? Was it the highest number of transactions and the volume?
Not even close. Not even close. And I will on Monday morning quarterback and explain why. We had last year in Manhattan, which is always our proxy for what happens citywide. But in Manhattan, there were 691 sales. That's a 2.5% turnover rate. I was projecting turnover above 5%, so it was only half. So I missed the mark by a significant amount. But I believe that 2026, we're going to see a huge increase. I will explain why the numbers panned out the way they did. And it's important to note that the 2025 turnover at 2.5% was the 7th year in a row that we had at or below trend turnover. That has never happened before. Even during the savings and loan crisis in the early 90s, we had 4 years where we were below trend. So 7 years below trend, there's such pent up demand to sell. And the reason why we didn't hit the numbers is because of the total and utter dysfunction in our rent stabilized housing market in New York.
That's right.
In 2019, the policymakers significantly changed the rules about how you can run rent-regulated housing in New York. The rent-regulated housing is the overwhelming majority of buildings in New York. There are more multifamily buildings in New York than any other type of property, and that market essentially froze. Why? Because values in that sector, for a variety of reasons, are down about 75% from where they were at the peak. So when you have a sector where your average debt to value ratio is about 50% and you lose 75% of value, what does that tell you? That tells you all of the equity is wiped out. It tells you that the debt is 50% impaired on the average building. Some are worse, but 50% impaired on the debt. And these are zombie buildings. The owner has no equity and can't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Our new mayor said he wants to freeze rents for 4 years in these buildings, and expenses going up. Even with property values going down, our taxes still go up every year. So there's no correlation between taxes and value as they're supposed to be. Expenses are going up significantly. Insurance, for instance, on a rent-regulated apartment building used to be $200 or $300 a unit. In some buildings today, it's $2,000 a unit.
That's right.
So a whole month's rent is going just to pay insurance for the year. So these buildings are zombie buildings. The owner doesn't want them. They want to give the keys back to the bank. The bank doesn't want the keys. There are so many liabilities associated with these properties that the bank doesn't want it. So the owner doesn't want it. The lender doesn't want it. The owner doesn't have incentive to invest in it. The lender doesn't have incentive to invest in it. And so these buildings are just stuck. Nobody wants them. They're not transacting. So I think that is a big reason why, although there should have been much higher turnover, and I think things generally, with the exception of the rent-regulated housing sector, all sectors are improving and doing better. We're seeing volumes pick up. We're seeing values pick up. We've turned the corner. The second sector in the market that really was hurting was B and C office stock. But even there, leasing activities picking up, values picking up. In the B and C office stock, we used to sell those buildings 8-10 years ago for $800 or $900 a foot. Yep. They were selling in the 300s, the 200s, even some deals in the high 100s per foot. It's impossible to find a deal in the 200s today. Getting harder and harder to find deals in the 300s. That market is starting to improve finally. So rent-regulated housing is really the only sector that is lacking and is likely to continue to face significant headwinds, but because of public policy, not because of supply and demand or market dynamics. But all other sectors are doing well. But I really think that at some point, the lenders are going to just have to come to grips with reality and bite the bullet and take the 10 cents or 15 cents on the dollar that these buildings are really worth relative to where they were at the peak, and just recycle that capital and move on. And that, unfortunately, it's likely to put a couple of banks out of business. But that's the cyclicality of the market, and that shows how deleterious public policy can be when it is completely misguided.
Yeah, we do have a question about that, and just seeing how you see this shake out, right, going forward. And I think you just kind of put a bow on that and answered that question, which is, it's going to be a tough market. That rent restricted multifamily market could be a difficult one to navigate over the next 12 to 24 months, but
even longer. I mean, it is. Yeah. You can't. The rent regulation system in New York, it is something politicians love, because you have over 1 million regulated apartments. 2 million people live in those on average, right? So you had a lot of voters who will vote on just one issue. They could disagree with a politician on every other position they have, but if the politician will preserve their below market housing, they're going to vote for that politician. And to hand out effectively a subsidy on a completely random basis, it's just based on inertia. It has nothing to do with ability to pay or anything else. It's like, I give an example. If you were handling the food stamp program, our rent regulated housing system is like if you were handing out food stamps and you had boxes of food stamps and you went to Grand Central Terminal and just had a box and said, take one, and just gave it to everybody walking out of the terminal. You have no idea who you're giving the subsidy to. Same way in housing. How could you not have means testing for this? I think many real estate people think that, hey, if you have, grandma's 93 and on fixed income, you're not going to kick grandma out of the street, but you have people making millions of dollars getting rent subsidies. I mean, it's completely crazy. It's just a random subsidy. Is there any other place in the country that gives out random subsidies without need? It just doesn't make any sense. It's a complete misallocation of our housing resources.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, moving on, I think that, one thing I will say is more supply has always been the answer to, a lot of these affordability questions. And just here in Kansas City, for example, we just put out a new episode last night on the latest Kansas City Planning and Zoning Commission. And this was a project that I was facilitating. It was a 53-acre site, and it was slated for 151 affordable homes starting at $300,000. In Missouri, you have the first-time home buyer credit, which allows you to buy a house with no down payment, almost get money at closing in some scenarios. And this plan was approved 10 years ago. This was just to reapprove the plan, the same exact plan. And 5 neighborhood associations showed up with a councilman that was, around for a very long time, and they shut it down. They shut down 151 brand new affordable single family homes. That's not going to help the affordability issue in Kansas City or any municipality. Right?
What was the basis, Logan? What was the basis upon which they shut it down?
They cited 3 things. 1, traffic concerns, which there was a traffic study done. 2, which was stormwater detention and runoff, which there are stormwater detention ponds for that. And the third part was that they were going to have too much dynamite to level the land, and that was going to be too much of a nuisance. That was the 3 things. And I couldn't believe it, because those are things that you have to deal with in development regardless, to make sure that a new safe subdivision right next to a Kansas City, Missouri park that's going to be affordable for our citizens to live in, right? It just kind of blew my mind. So
yeah, you can't underestimate the let's not use stupidity, but you can't underestimate the short-sightedness of people. It's like if you're on a budget at home, you want to save on your electric bill, you're going to unplug your refrigerator to save on your electric bill. I mean, come on. It just sounds completely ridiculous. But that's those are the political folks we're dealing with. Policymakers have objectives beyond the best interest of their constituents. It's their primary objective is to get reelected, and when that's the case, you often get outcomes that don't correlate to the best interest of your constituents.
Well, we touched on AI earlier on in the episode. I got about 3 or 4 questions in, so I just want to ask one question on this. You're growing your team. How big is the team now at BKREA?
We have about 20 people now.
Amazing. And 12 months ago, it was 5 or 6?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's incredible. So that's fast growth. And you're dealing with a lot of new or younger individuals in the industry, right?
Less experienced, I like to say. I used the word younger once. I got a lot of grief for that. But I don't care how old anybody is.
Yeah.
But less experienced people. And these folks are kicking butt. It's great. And I'm at 20, and that's where I'm staying. In the Massey Knakal days, we had 250 people. That in some ways was a management nightmare. So I don't want to. 20 is about the max I'm going to get to. So we're at a good level and hoping to stay here.
That's awesome. Well, I'm about half of that right now with my team, and I have a question that came in that I'm selfishly going to ask, because I'm very curious on your response to this. But will the next generation of top brokers look more like analysts, marketers, relationship managers, or mix of all of them? But with AI, how does this next generation of top brokers really interact with clients anyway differently, or what skill set do they need to have?
No, look, on that, I will just say that, I've been doing this 42 years. The business is exactly the same as it was, just technological changes. And the tools that we have today have changed, but the basic business is fundamentally the same. So I think what this will do, and I think what has happened, is that the technology has allowed fewer people to do more.
Yes.
For instance, if I was operating in the 80s or 90s, it would be impossible to do more than 50, 60 deals a year.
That's right.
When technology really kicked in, like in 2014, I sold 150 buildings. There's no way you could do that without technology. So I think what technology is going to do is it will continue to narrow the field down, and you're going to have fewer and fewer people being more and more productive. So I think if you look at the 3 pillars of what I think the characteristics are of top brokers in our business: 1, expertise; 2, passion; 3, ability to use discipline well. 2 and 3 are totally within you. How much do you love the business? How much do you love the outcomes that the business can produce for you? Two, are you able to use discipline well? Do you have the ability to say, shit, I really want to go out for a beer with the guys now, but I got to get this report done. And you sit there and actually get the report done and not go out for a beer with the guys. That's something that is completely within you. And 100 years from now, those things are still going to be within people, regardless of the technology that exists. The thing that will change is the first one, which is your level of expertise. To the extent that you use technology well, the level of expertise can go off the charts. Look, I never dreamed 20 years ago that today I'd be able to go in and give somebody 200 insights into the market based on the algorithms we applied to our NACA land index and tell them that, hey, if you have condition A versus condition B, you're likely to get 11.3% more in your price. If you do this as opposed to that, you're going to be 27% better. All of these things that you're giving insight to people that they don't have and couldn't get. And then to be able to go to a buyer and say, look, I'd love to come to you want me to come to your office and talk about this deal with you? You've only offered 68% of the selling price of the deals over the past 10 years. Why am I going to waste my time coming to talk to you? Are you really wanting to buy property, or you just have nothing better to do? These are things that will enhance your ability to be more productive in your output. But it still comes down to relationship building. Like the quote you had up of me saying we're not in the real estate business, we're in the information business. Initially, I was saying that. I modified that about a year ago to say it's information and relationships. Relationships are still going to be the key. I think that you could have the best data in the world, the best insights in the world, but if you're a butthead, it's less likely that somebody's going to want to work with you, even if they think you have a little better information than other people. It has to be a combination of great insight, great data, proprietary stuff that doesn't exist anywhere else, and your ability to make relationships and connect with people. So I think that what technology has done is it has allowed fewer people to do more. And interestingly, if you look at the trends, you would think that, hey, technology has made the deal process faster. There's probably so much more going on, but there's not more commerce happening. If you look at historically in New York anyway, there were more sales in the 80s than in the 90s, more sales in the 90s than in the noughts, more sales in the noughts than in the last decade. There's not more happening. It's just fewer people are able to do more. And I think that trend will continue. And AI is not going to replace anybody, but people using AI will replace people who are not using AI.
Very well said. Three things that I took away from that. You're speaking of an eponymous law called the Pareto's principle. 20% of the folks are doing 80% of getting 80% of the business done. That's going to become fractal. So the 20% of the 20% who have adopted AI that know how to be more efficient, qualify their buyers, like you just mentioned, not going to their office when it's 68% of the bid price, are going to do 94% of the business. That was my first takeaway. The second one was the discipline side of things. We have adopted something called the rule of 100 from Alex Hormozy. And the rule of 100, and man, you and Alex need to get on a podcast if you haven't already, because my goodness, that would be an incredible conversation. The guy has just blown up 10 portfolio companies out in Vegas. Love listening to him. The rule of 100 says 100 touch points. That can be calls, that can be DMs and messages, that can be spending 100 minutes on one social media post, whatever it is. You need to do something for 100 minutes or do 100 things a day on the cold outreach side that's going to allow things to come into your business. Now, that was my second point. And the third point, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but those two things really stood out to me with what you just said. And I think that is so important because the fundamentals of this business, the relationship side, that's what it was. The third part is a relationship. Let me tell a quick story. So 5-acre parcel out in Dodge City, Kansas, way out there. We had the guy that was a city councilman. He was on my team now from Dodge City, Kansas. They've got 5 acres. They need to bring in national retailers. We're the group to do it. We can get the exposure. We can work with Retail Coach. We can work with them on bringing preferred developers in. Guess what? They're listing with their relative from Wichita, Kansas, who has no experience doing any of that. We put the best proposal forward, anything and everything that we could have done. Absolutely, relationships still matter. And unfortunately, they're going to move forward with that. Now, my pitch back was, hey, I don't want to cut your relative out, your family relative out. Let's work together on this thing, because I want to make sure that you don't tie this piece of land up for 12 months and then nothing happens on it. And then you come to me after everybody has seen it and it's a stale deal and it's lost all its momentum, right? But the relationships do matter. So those are 3 takeaways that I just took away from what you just mentioned, Bob.
Awesome. Good takeaways.
Okay, so going to moving on. Let me actually go to this slide here. So we've talked about this. Last time that you were here, we visited the historic context of commercial real estate transaction and volumes. You got me obsessed with knowing my numbers in Kansas City, right? And understanding the national landscape, which has now put me on a track to every quarter, market reports are going out, market signals are going out. And I have had a lot of people reach out to me because they think that I have more information than other people don't. And it's not that I don't. This is a lot of public information tied anecdotally to my own experience in Kansas City, mixed together, and then communicated out via LinkedIn, newsletters, and market reports. And it's easier now than ever to do that work through artificial intelligence. But one thing that I want to say was, you know what they say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So I do want to talk about real estate cycles very quickly, because this is a question that I get quite a bit. And I feel somewhat unsophisticated enough to answer the question other than what I have studied about real estate cycles. Okay, so 2025, everybody was saying survive until 25, right? And some people are saying it's going to be heaven in 27 and get rich in 26. But like, when you look at this cycle where we're at 2025, which I think we're at the end of the long 20-year real estate cycle, what is your take? I mean, is there going to be some big, because I have a lot of doomsdayers that reach out to me and they want to talk about the big fallout of real estate. And I just point back to the fundamentals of things. And they're like, yes, but look at this 18.6-year real estate cycle. I mean, how much of that actually translates into what you think about on a regular basis?
I go to 40,000 feet quite often to take a look at it. And I think it's remarkable that, every cycle is different. Every cycle is different. Everybody says, oh, real estate cycles, there's 6-7 years.
Yeah.
That's BS. Every market is different. Look at New York. When we came out of the S&L crisis, things started to improve in 1993. Right, 89 fell off the table. By 93, the market was cranking again. The RTC was dumping hundreds of properties. Volume was picking up. The market was great until 2007. That's 14 years. We had 14 years of straight up. Now we have 7 years that we've been down, and the cyclical peak for the current market that we're in, the cyclical peak was in 2014 and 2015. 11 years ago,
right?
12 years ago. So we've been on a down for the longest down we've ever had. 93 to 07 was the biggest up we ever had. We're in the middle of the biggest down we ever had. Are things going to go down in New York? I think that's an impossibility. And I rarely use absolutes like that. But when you have sectors, namely the multifamily sector and the B and C office sector, that a year ago, buildings were selling for the same price per square foot that you could have bought them at 25 or 30 years ago, how can they possibly go down more? They can't. Rents are rising, and yes, expenses are rising. So net incomes, depending on the property type, could be up a little, could be down a little. But the fact is, if you look at things from a macro trend, things have to be improving. So we always look at things on a probability basis. Everything that we think about and look at the market from is probability based. If you're in Vegas and you're playing roulette and red comes up 30 times in a row, the probability black comes up on the next spin is still only 48%. But probability has to balance out. So the odds are that eventually you have to hit black, because it had the probabilities have to get back to long-term trend, because that's why the long-term trend exists. So, when we have 7 years of at or below trend turnover, we know that, that the ball's going to land on black soon, and it has to. It just can't keep coming up red. It's statistically impossible. So I think you have to look at the market from a probability base and figure out where you're going. And maybe nobody can time the markets perfectly, but you look at probability, and I think you can draw some pretty decent insights from that.
Absolutely. Got a good question in. Somebody's tracking leading indicators, or what they seem to be thinking about leading indicators, which is capital flows. And capital flows look to be, I think Rich Hill put this out, or maybe MSCI did, that $250 billion of equity was raised for real estate focused acquisitions in 2026. That would be, you would think that would be a leading indicator of more transactions happening. However, do you track any other leading indicators like equity raise and dry powder? That's another term that I hear quite a bit in the industry. It looks like that's up 29% from 2025, 2024. So seemingly there's a lot of capital that's ready. When we spoke about 12 months ago, you said there was going to be a confluence of discretionary sellers and non-discretionary sellers. Pair that alongside the amount of capital that has been raised for real estate. One would think that transaction volumes are going to be up this year.
Yeah, well, capital flows are really interesting. Most people mistakenly think that cap rates and interest rates are correlated. They're not. Cap rates are more highly correlated to capital flow. If I gave you $10 billion of equity and said, Logan, go buy multifamily in Kansas City, I guarantee you that regardless of what the interest rate environment is, cap rates are going to go down in Kansas City. If I gave you 10 billion of equity and said, go buy multifamily, right? So
that's right.
But I think you can't just look at capital raised or dry powder or anything like that as indicative of what's going to happen in the market. Because if you raise 50 billion of equity and you don't spend any of it, does that really make have an influence on the market? What we look at, and has been historically pretty accurate in terms of predicting an up or a down in the market, are two sectors. We look at the hotel sector, and we look at land. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, hotels are extraordinarily reactive to the market today because hotels have leases for one day.
That's right.
Right. So they are very, very highly reactive to changes in the market. And why land? Because land is nothing more than a proxy for what people believe market conditions are going to be like 3 or 4 years from today, and not just some prognosticator guessing. These are folks who are actually putting their money where their mouth is. If they believe the market's going to be really great 3 or 4 years from today, they're going to be buying land like wild. If they think things are going to stink 3 or 4 years from today, they're not buying land, right? So land is a great proxy for the level of optimism or pessimism that market participants have. And those two sectors have been highly, highly accurate relative to predicting movements in the market.
Very interesting. Well, I definitely track the land markets here in Kansas City, but I have not spent a lot of time looking into the hospitality side of things. One thing that you mentioned, which I agree with 100%, capital flows are very much more indicative than just interest rates. Dr. Peter Linneman taught me that. And I don't know if you've read his research with Dr. Matt Lariva, but they have put that out, statistical analysis on that specific amount. They have a great research paper that was done, I think, 6-7 years ago. That taught me more about where the market might be headed and what to track than anything else. And I love posting about that. So I'm very glad that you said that. But I do enjoy listening to and hearing Dr. Peter Linneman's perspective on things quite a bit.
Yeah, Peter is one of the most insightful minds in the industry, and it was one of my Wharton professors.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know that. That's very cool. All right. Well, look, I think that, we've had some really good discussions here around real estate cycles and things. I have to ask you, because one thing that is changing the landscape of real estate volumes and transactions is this huge craze around data centers. And I don't know how much you're involved in this in New York City. And I imagine that people aren't putting data centers in New York City. I don't know. But watching buildings in Chicago, for example, vacant office buildings being converted into data centers. And one happened on 350 LaSalle Drive. I think I got the address wrong, but it's on LaSalle in Chicago. Building was bought for $12 million. A utility commitment for 33 megawatts of power was solidified, and they sold that building to an edge data center company 18 months later for $48 million. Is that something that you are looking into or looking at in 2026? Is how this land and this infrastructure, Brookfield and Vantage Data Center Group and all of these groups really focused on this data center. Does this change anything around your business or commercial real estate in 2026?
No, rightly or wrongly, Logan, I'm very, very myopic and New York centric. I think data centers, from what I hear tangentially, it's great business, but that those buildings work significantly better horizontally than vertically. Yes. And New York is a vertical city. So it's not been a lot of data center activity here, but I do have some clients that are doing a lot of data center work around the country, and they think it's the flavor of the month, and that it's going to be around for quite a while.
Yeah, it's a very interesting market to keep our eyes on. We are a part of a couple different projects because we are very much a horizontal city here in Kansas City, and we have a lot of land. And when companies like Panasonic decide to drop a $4 billion EV battery plant out in the middle of Kansas, and TerraPower with Mr. Bill Gates has an MOU with a small town in Kansas to do small modular reactors, it gets the attention of people. So I was just curious more than anything to ask you that question. Okay, well, timeless lessons for this cycle. I have been, and these are takeaways that I had from our first conversation that we discussed, but data really does beat opinions. However, you just coached me to say data is great, but you got to interpret that data in a way and add your own anecdotal evidence and your own information into the public data. That's where the excellence is really created. So I appreciate that. Trust and relationships is the real currency. That's a fundamental driver of this industry. Being able to adopt artificial intelligence to track and score different buyers, as well as, the ability to say, if your site has this, you're going to get 11.3% more. I think that is phenomenal. One thing that I will say is I cannot believe that there is not a commercial real estate appraisal valuation company trying to figure out how to utilize artificial intelligence and put an address in and be able to validate those comps and have an appraisal in 7 to 10 days. I'm not sure how that's not been created yet, but would love your opinion on that. And then down markets, obviously create a lot of opportunities, and you have to, and every market is very specific. If it's a down market or an up market, geographic location and asset classes. So, those are some of the timeless lessons that I took away from our first conversation and have been solidified here today.
Yeah, no, all great lessons. And, no doubt that, being the market expert and being able to articulate data and perspectives that don't exist anywhere else, that is really what differentiates you and sets you up as the market expert. Yeah,
100%. Well, look, I'm going to go back to this real quick because we've got about 5 minutes left. I asked you these questions previously. I'm not at my other office, my main office, and I have your book, Selling Buildings, on my desk, and I have it on a regular basis, yours and Alan Buchanan's book. See the sequence right next to me, because he is saving me a lot of time with qualifying my prospects and the projects that I work on. Very, very excited. But what about you? What is your favorite book or podcast that you're kind of diving into right now?
Well, a lot of the old reliable books. There's so many books that I love. Good to Great by Jim Collins, I think, is a fantastic one, and teaches you to focus on that one thing that you can do better than anybody else in the world at. And I love the books by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. 10X, The Gap and the Gain, and Who Not How. Great books. You can go to bobknakal.com. I have a suggested reading list with a lot of great books there. And, really, I love reading, always learning something. I just finished Danny Fontaine's book, Pitch, which is fantastic. I realized that, I've been doing this a long time, but my pitch stinks. And totally revamping the whole way I pitch business now based on Danny's book. Wow. So a lot of great stuff out there.
Yeah. And guys, Bob has so many pieces of information, his own lessons learned. I love reading that. It kind of reminds me of Trammell Crow's internal document that is always shared around, which is, like 40 years of experience. And so you can go find the lessons learned that Bob has put out there for everyone to review as well. So
yeah, Logan, I'll take the opportunity to say I am starting a mentoring course.
Okay.
Mentor young people. One of the byproducts of having the social media presence that I have now is, I get several questions, several requests for a coffee or lunch or a Zoom per day, and I just can't keep up with it. So I'm starting a mentoring class, and it will teach people how to create your own map room of sort, how to interpret data properly, how can small guys compete with the big global firms, how can the global firms not get beat by the small timers, how did the mid-sized firms who are getting attacked from above and below, how do they overcome things? We're going to tell deal stories, ways to get listings, making your work much more productive. So really excited about the new mentoring class that I'm going to be holding, and we should be launching sometime in March. And follow me on social media for announcements about that program. But it's going to be called the Knakal Deal Making Network. And I advise you, if you are interested in learning the inside tips and how to be more productive, make more money, be a better broker, I think there'll be a lot of great takeaways in that course.
Sign me up. I'm in. I got to figure out how to get on the beta list or the waiting list. I'll be there. Mr. Bob Knakal, thank you for that. I did have one of your mentees on the show here recently as well. Maybe it's just a business colleague, but he very much believes you to be a mentor, and that was Simon Inwea, and we discussed data centers at length on the show. So shout out to Simon. Thank you for being a guest as well. Mr. Alan Buchanan and Jason Sneed, thank you guys for both being here as well. Great seeing you both, two Titans, and thank you for the kind shout outs. You got it, man. When you do good work like you are doing in the industry and continuing to put out that information, you're going to get shout outs for sure. Jason Sneed is a huge follower and fan of yours, Bob. So we'll end with this. Outside of reading Selling Buildings, what would you say are your top 3 pieces of advice for any level of broker or agent?
I think continue to think outside the box and always be curious. Read a lot, try to sharpen your skills, realize there's always a better way to do things, that you can always do better. No matter how good you're doing, you can always do better. So try to increase the quality of your data, increase the quality of your expertise, be more selective about what you're doing and how you're doing it. The best analogy I can use, if you really want to turn our business, which for a lot of people, you're like a butterfly in a garden. You're fluttering around, you land over here for a few seconds, you go over here, you land a few seconds, you go over here. And you're just living deal to deal. That's a really tough way to do this business. But if you're a true expert, if you really are a go-to person, you turn this business into an annuity. And if you use the analogy of a doctor, right? You're out running, you rip the ACL in your knee, and you see 2 different doctors, and one says, "Oh, knee ACL, no problem. I've done a ton of those knee ACLs. I do ankles, wrists, elbows, shoulders. I can do it all. I'm great at it." And then you go see another doctor, and he says, "Yeah, I only do knee ACLs. I've done 9,263 of them." all I do. I don't do anything else. Who are you going to have surgery with?
That's right. No, that's a fresh wound in our pouring salt in the fresh wound here at Kansas City, Mr. BK. So Patrick Mahomes is absolutely rehabbing from that right now, but it makes a lot of sense, right? So Jason, hopefully you found some value in that. Bob, thank you so much for being here again. I appreciate it. I hope everyone here, I got to about 5 of the 40 questions. So we'll continue to have you on and discussing those going forward. But hope you guys enjoyed starting your day with BK. Maybe that needs to be a podcast or a daily thing for you, BK, is start your day with BK. There's your LinkedIn post or your social media post. Bob, thanks for everything that you do. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for sharing the time with me today.
That's great, Logan. Thanks for having me on. I love seeing the Bible behind you. That's awesome. My faith is very important to me.
I know it is.
And I wish everybody the best of luck. Go get them. This is the greatest business in the world. One of the purest forms of meritocracy that exists. You get out of it exactly what you put into it. Go get them, everybody.
Have a great day. See you guys.